Recently, Boyce Watkins has been very vocal about the Diddy documentary produced by 50 Cent, and honestly, what stands out to me isn't just what he's saying, but how he's saying it. In my opinion, Dr. Boyce Watkins operates in a very passive way. On the surface, he presents himself as someone who's simply sharing an opinion. But if you listen closely, there's always a layer of subtle shade embedded in his commentary. As his criticism continues, it gradually becomes sharper and more dismissive. He often positions himself as the ultimate authority, the voice of reason, almost like his perspective is the correct one by default. Anyone who disagrees is treated as if they just don't understand things on his level. There's a paternalistic tone to it, like he's speaking down to people rather than engaging with them. That's been Dr. Boyce Watkins' formula for a long time. He presents himself as the enlightened figure, the one who has it all figured out, while implying that everyone else is either misguided or intellectually inferior. It almost comes across in a messianic way. Listen to me, I see what you can't. And to be fair, that strategy has worked for him to a certain extent throughout his online career. It's helped him build an audience and maintain relevance. But we're seeing that same exact approach play out again, right? Now, in how he's responding to this documentary and the conversation surrounding it.
Let me just say this. I watched the Diddy documentary and it was well done. It wasn't a surprise for a lot of us who followed Diddy over the last 30 years. Now, one thing that I had a debate with my wife about was 50 Cent's role in the documentary. She seemed to feel that 50 Cent had done something really amazing for the victims and it really stood up for victims' rights and everything else. And I said, now, 50 Cent did a great documentary, and I don't know this man. I said, but I don't think he did this just for the victims. I don't think this was really a matter of a good man trying to go get justice against a bad man. 50 Cent and Diddy have had a beef for a very long time. Diddy's responsible for a lot of what's happening to him. I think that his goal is to take down Diddy because that's what 50 Cent does to his rivals. I said, remember what he did with Ja Rule? Ja Rule puts up a post, and Ja Rule points out times where 50 Cent himself has been accused of hitting women, raping women, all kinds of stuff. Hip hop has produced toxic culture for a very long time. It has created certain groups of men that have been told, perhaps because they have money and fame and damn near get worshipped by the black community, that they are almost like gods. You know, that's why Kanye calls himself Jesus and Jay-Z called himself Jehovah. And you have men that feel that they're above the law. And that's why there's a long string of all different kinds of problematic behavior, from Snoop Dogg to Jay-Z to everything. It's misrepresented the black male all around the world. And so I'm not here to say that 50 Cent's a bad guy for making this documentary. I imagine it probably did some good, but they're all in the same culture. And I remember I said to my wife, I said, well, do you remember when 50 Cent made the song? You know, I know what you heard about me, but I'm a blah, 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 P-I-M-P. I said, you know, a pimp is a... And she said, yeah, but he was just probably just using the word pimp just to use it. I said, yeah, maybe he was. But the thing is that you're still glorifying. This is how crazy the culture got. Snoop Dogg used to go to award shows with women on a leash. You know, he had Bishop Magic Don Juan a notice saying would travel with him to award shows. So, again, you know, African culture was very big in all of hip hop. 50 Cent wasn't immune. You know, a lot of these guys are Jay-Z all the way across the board. So ultimately, I think that we have to think about this in terms of Diddy not just being a terrible guy. He is a terrible guy, but he's not some sort of an anomaly. He is the most terrible guy amongst a culture that has produced a lot of terrible guys. Now, feel free to make your comments in the thread and let me know what you think. But I think that we have a cultural issue here, not just a Diddy problem. I'll see you later. Peace.
So once again, Dr. Boyce Watkins uses a very broad brush to lump a lot of people together. 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Diddy, painting them all as the same type of dysfunctional black men within the community. These so-called black male archetypes. What's interesting is the way he talks about them, because there's a clear pattern in his framing. He goes on to suggest that 50 Cent doesn't genuinely care about the victims, and what he's really implying there is, if it were me, Dr. Boyce Watkins, I would care about the victims. In other words, if he were in 50 Cent's position, he wouldn't move the same way. Because he's Dr. Boyce Watkins, because he's different, because he's real. Now, that might sound convincing to someone who doesn't really know Dr. Boyce Watkins or hasn't followed his history. But for people who do know Dr. Boyce Watkins, who've watched him over time, that framing hits a little differently. And that's where things start to get questionable.
The video that really struck me, and that's when I reached out to you, is when a person who is trying to be somewhat of a prolific figure, someone who, and I'm talking about Dr. Boyce Watkins, who presents himself as someone who can help our community to be financially free or woke, and come to find out, he didn't even have his own business. While he's in your home recording, he has yet to have his own home recorded in the trademark center.
Now, that's Tasha K. She's interviewing Meechie X, and she's asking Meechie X about some of the hypocrisy of Dr. Boyce Watkins. And what do you get?
First of all, Dr. Watkins doesn't pay anybody. I don't know if he's broke. Let me take that back. He pays some people, but he uses black women. What he thinks is that we are naive, and what it was is he thought that I was naive because social media wasn't really my thing.
But wait, it gets worse.
All the other women that have come on his platform, so many of them, he had them sign contracts. Now, he didn't do this to me because I was the bread and the butter. I was the one that was bringing in all of the views. So he would pay me. But the women I started to bring on, he said to them, he wanted them to work 4 months trial period and then work 30 more days before they got their first check. So 6 months. You're only paying somebody $30 to $50 for a live. And he wanted them to wait for that, right? So he's receiving super chats, cash apps, and all of this for these people that are on the show, but he's paying these women nothing.
So if we're going to talk about 50 Cent, let's at least be honest about something. Whatever you think about him, 50 Cent is openly calling out exploitation of women. He brings up the PM song and raises the question of whether the kind of content borders on sexual trafficking. Fine. But here's where things get uncomfortable, because while Dr. Boyce Watkins is busy pointing fingers, there are serious accusations tied directly to him. You've got Mayek speaking out. You've got Paris, Milan, and there are others. Multiple women have gone on record over the years accusing Dr. Boyce Watkins of using black women, not paying black women, and taking advantage of their labor. This isn't some one-off rumor. This is a recurring theme that keeps coming up whenever his name is mentioned. Yet, despite that, he sits back and tries to throw everyone else under the bus, presenting himself as if he's holier than thou. But the reality is, Dr. Boyce Watkins himself has been connected to some of the most questionable behavior in the black online community over the last several years. Should I remind you? Should we talk about the All-Black National Convention, where he brought Jay Morrison on stage and gave him legitimacy? Someone who later went on to scam black Americans out of millions of dollars. $12 million, to be exact. And where was the accountability? Jay Morrison didn't have it, and Dr. Boyce Watkins didn't either. Instead, he deflected. He made excuses. He said things like, "Oh, you don't go after white men when they scam?" That was the response. And this is the man who wants to be taken seriously as a moral authority? I'm sorry, Dr. Boyce Watkins. As long as I'm here on the internet, I'm not letting that go. I'm not letting go of the lack of accountability. I'm not letting go of how the black community was misled. You lecture black men about mistreating black women, yet you're accused of doing the very same thing while taking zero responsibility for it. And then, you want to turn around and speak on Diddy? Speak on 50 Cent? Speak on Jay-Z? As if you're somehow above them? You're not. You're not a moral authority. You're not someone people see as real or honest because you're not. The people who actually know your history understand exactly who you are. We're not even going to dive deep into the donation controversies, the performances, the emotional manipulation, allegations. We'll leave that alone for now. The point is this: if Diddy is bad, if 50 is bad, if Jay-Z is bad, if Jay-Z is bad, then you represent the same culture just packaged differently. You're the wolf in sheep's clothing. At least those guys are upfront about who they are. You try to hide it, you try to spin it, you try to act like you're not down with the get down. When you absolutely are, you defended a scammer. You helped legitimize someone who cost black people their money. And then you want to pretend that's not who you are? All anyone has to do is come to you with a deal and say, "There's money in this, endorse me," and you're right there. We've seen it. There's evidence of it. And notice something else. You've never heard waves of women coming out, saying they were mistreated by people like Kevin Samuels, O'Shea, or others in that space. But when it comes to you, these stories keep popping up over and over again. And yet you claim you've spent your whole life helping women. I'll explain that. Why is it always you in the middle of these situations? You need to stop playing a role. It doesn't look good. It looks bad, really bad. At this point, everyone knows it's not real. You're just talking. The image doesn't match the record. So what do you think? It's your boy, Yosh, at it again with another episode of Dust Junk. I appreciate all the support. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, and we're out.